Hello, welcome to another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. Hopefully you are well, wherever you are and whatever time of day it is that you are listening. Hopefully it has been a wonderful day for you. We are super excited to be in the studio, not with Ben, as always, but with the guest that will be joining us this evening. Ben has bigged him up big time, so you can tell us if it lets us down or not. I'm not going to judge, and I don't want to put too much pressure on. But Ben has bigged this one up big time and told me all about it, and the research has been really, really strong. So Ben, how are you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm good, mate. I've got retro 2024 Uprising merch on. It's going to be. I just thought I'm represented today. It's a bit cold. I don't want to put heating on. You said you're a tight Yorkshireman, but I don't want to put heating on, so I've got a jumper on.
Because you've been training hard, so you can get back into gear from 2 years ago. That's what it is.
That's
what it is. Yeah, 2024, Ben. 2024 body, innit? That's what it is. Don't even pretend it's about the heat. He's like,
just want to show you.
Don't talk about time of year. We're in August, and he's wearing a hoodie. Everybody.
But can I just ask anybody? Does anybody know a vet? Because these swans look sick.
We're getting picking apples.
Yeah. Anyway, well,
should we dive in?
We just dick about. Why do we dick about for the first 2 minutes of any podcast?
Well, because somebody once said it was funny, and then we've never forgotten about it. That one person that said we were funny, and we lived by it. So, should we, Russell? Do you want to come in, or Russ? You can introduce yourself, and then tell us for the guests that might not know who you are, and I suppose your why. I suppose we'll start there if that's all right.
Yeah, great to be with you boys. So what's my why? That's a big question. So I grew up in Manchester, UK, and school sucked for me. I really disliked school. It was just a place I just, it did nothing for me. Loved the sport. And that's really why I went to school. Football after other classes finished. I was a big cricketer. So kind of sport was my identity at school, but it was never about the learning. Had some decent relationships with the teachers, but just kind of a bit of a void for me up till about 18. So my why getting into education was really, I launched in kind of Moss Side, Manchester, a school called Loretto. So kind of right in the thick of things, which is actually my old college. Funnily enough, I went back to my college, and just kind of worked for 7 years, trying to give back to kids who are a little like me, and that was really rewarding. And for the stuff Ben might have spoken about, I wasn't even thinking about all that stuff at this point. My why was simply to go into education once my cricket career didn't quite pan out. And just give back a little bit. Just work with kids like me. That was kind of as complicated as it was for me back then.
So, for those people who are just listening or are looking at perspective and thinking Ben's really as tall as these two that are on the screen because their heads are almost level, that he absolutely isn't. Ben, he's 5'8" ish, maybe a little bit less, 5'7.5" really. Russ is a giant. So when we're talking about cricket, he's in comparison to me. And Steve, what are you? Are you 6 foot, Steve?
I am 6 foot, yeah.
6 foot. So I just dwarfed. So that's the reason why I do everything on a camera now, because nobody knows how tall I am. So I'm a little guy. But so Russ, you came Manchester, Steve's favourite city. We won't talk about it. Steve's a Leeds fan, so
okay.
So we won't talk because I think I know where you sit as well from a football perspective. So we won't mention that to Steve. Steve might end up leaving the call. But before we kind of get into passion for education, you wanted to give something back there. I just want to ask that question, and I'm going to dig into it. So hopefully it's okay to do so. You said school sucked for you. It wasn't the place. What was that made that like that? It's not necessarily about individual teachers or schools or whatever. What was it about school system? And then obviously you wanted to give something back. And then as you're going into what you're doing now, that's probably helped develop the why, hasn't it? So I wonder if you could talk about how that's shaped where you are.
Yeah, it's been interesting, looking back as a 46-year-old man now to the kind of kids we were when we were 14, 15. It's tricky, isn't it? You kind of look back and you kind of try and put some stuff into context. But I think I was just bored. I think I was just I loved the social elements in school. Like I always remember we had we had a form tutor who was also a maths teacher, and he used to set up like ping pong tables in the maths kind of class. And that was cool. We'd all go, we'd actually all hang out, play ping pong. It's Manchester, so it's always raining, so you're never outside much. But yeah, so anything activity based, I kind of enjoyed. Like this, what did we call it back in the 90s? Design, technology, woodwork, anything like that. And I'm not good necessarily with, as my wife will tell you, I'm not good with my hands. I'm not good with building stuff and creating a bit. But it was just, I was just bored. I was just bored, sat there passive. It's a passive kind of consumer. And I think that looking back a long time now, and looking back 30 years, um, I would locate it in just boredom. I think in terms of my demotivation in school, and I kind of was just very, especially kind of GCSEs, I was just very average. Probably came out right in the halfway, 50-60% percentile. So I got through it, but I kind of look back and do wonder, as we all do, if I'd just done a little bit more. But then I also think growing up in Manchester in the mid-90s, it was kind of an interesting place as well. It was, academics were not top of the list for any of us, I don't think. There was a music revolution going on. There was sport. There was, nightlife. We weren't old enough to do it, but, you knew it was there. And, so Manchester was a kind of a buzzing place in the 90s. There was a lot going on. And yeah, I don't think for many of us, work, university, good job necessarily jumped out and kind of grasped us. A lot of my friends didn't, we just didn't dream like that. That was in our psyche to think of. Even the university was a stretch for many of us.
Yeah, I was completely disengaged. A little bit younger than you, 42, but very, very similar. I passive, sitting in rows, silence, talk when when we ask you a question, those kind of things just didn't suit me. I ended up, I think I told this story on the podcast. I ended up being locked in an art room, in the dark room, and I only kind of explored and had this conversation when I was going through my ADHD assessment. And they're like, "Oh, tell me about school. Any challenges and anything else?" I was like, "Well, I did well in primary." I said, because I was a performing athlete and did well. Really was never in school. Got injured for the first few years of secondary school. Was out for 2 years, and then kind of went back into it. But school was literally, I loved the social element, loved all of the other stuff. But in a classroom, holy smoke, I must have been awful for a teacher, because I was just like, I look back and I was like, I was just a little shit. But ultimately, was that my fault? I wasn't really bad. I was never disrespectful. People might have seen it as disrespect, but I was more just, people would say the class clown, or I would disrupt through talking and those kind of things, because I just didn't want to sit there and feel that I was being filled full of information. And also, I probably tried for however many years they made me, and I don't remember any of it. Ben talks about U-shaped valleys and all this wonderful stuff that he knows, because Ben is a well-read, well-researched, understanding guy, and I literally know nothing from those times. Nothing. I literally cannot remember hardly anything from school. Nothing. And luckily, my mum was a drama teacher. My dad was great, was travelled in terms of his work and all those kind of things, moved away into secondary school. But somehow, despite what the teachers told me, I ended up with 11 C's. The most average thing that you can come out with. Like literally 11 C's. I'm like, I don't know how I got 11 anyway. I think 2 of them were 2 halves or something. But it's just crazy, isn't it? But the crazy nature is, we're all sitting on the call and we're all passionate about education from our experience. The absolute bonkers nature is, in so many people, there'll be children that are sitting there that will then sit there at our age going, I didn't want to sit there passively. Because really, how much has it changed? It's probably got worse, because at least at GCSE, for certain stuff, I got to do some portfolios and some assignments and some tasks and some, like, now you don't get to do any of it. So I don't think in 40 years it's changed at all. Well, let's say since 16, so however many years ago that is, 25 years, education has not changed whatsoever, and is only growing the divide and the number of people that are bored.
Yeah, it's beautifully resistant to change. I mean, I think it should, as an institution, as a domain, its resistance to adaptation probably shouldn't be studied. It is quite brilliant and not change it. But I also want to say I don't blame the teachers at all. I really don't. I don't blame, because even when I trained as a teacher, 2005, 6, 7-ish, around there, we were taught the same uh, pedagogical approaches. We were taught the same methods. And I delivered those methods for many years. And that's, something I talk about a lot. I'm angry at myself a lot of the time. When I first went into teaching, I followed those methods from the mid-90s in the early part of my career. And, when I trained as a teacher, my first few years of education, we never heard about interdisciplinary learning, project based. I mean, you kidding me? Like, none of those things went around. It was teach these kids for the exams, and your results better be good, or you're out. So that was really it. And it was a very high achieving school I was at. Though Loretto might be the heart of my side, but it's a very high achieving school. So you had to deliver. That was the kind of non-negotiable. But in terms of the teachers, I'd be a hypocrite if I blamed them, because I was equally as guilty of it in the early start of my careers. I did venture off, though. I would say I did be in my latter years before I joined Think Global. I would say in my kind of 5th and 6th year at Loretto, I did start deviating, or taking a few more risks, you know, trying to break out of the kind of prison of, this is the curriculum, these are the 3 papers, you must just do this. So there was kind of a glitch in the matrix for me. I was kind of pushing the edges, not too much, but there was I felt something wasn't right by the end of my kind of UK career.
I think that whole it's not blaming the teachers is exactly where we sit as well, because we lived in the system of doing it and feeling like the pressure of exams, the pressure of results, the pressure of performance management, the pressure of being a great teacher and trying to build this and trying to build a career and a progression. And then the fact is that as Edufuturists and stuff that we do with our awards and the champion of this kind of stuff, getting the best out of businesses and organizations to be able to then give them back out to teachers is something that we're passionate about, because it's not the individual teachers on the ground, because it's part of a broader system. And I know that one of the things that you that we'll get into today is that the system, it's not that the system's broken, and we've said this a few times. Cigar to Mitra talks about the system's not broken, it's perfectly tuned to do what it was designed to do. We just don't need it anymore. We need a new system, and we need a new way of doing it, which obviously will come up in the conversation. But maybe talk to us then, because you intimated there, after a few years being at Loretto and teaching in the UK, you then took your education took a different not the usual path, did it? So maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I was teaching over in the summer. I was seconded in the summer to go and teach in programs across California. So I'd kind of had a window into this world of international teachers. And I remember sat with a buddy of mine called Dan, who taught in Singapore. And he was talking about this beach house he had and this school he taught at. And I was 28, 29. I had no idea about international education and what it, if I would be a good fit for it, or if that was a good move for me. And I just began, in my time in the US, I began to hear all these stories about these teachers scattered all over the world doing this thing called international education. So, and I was really that naive about it. Like, things like the IB, I just didn't get that. That was just, it was Jesus in A level. That was my world. So I began to kind of go down this rabbit hole about international education. And that led to, I think, a kind of crossroads for me personally. I was at the stage in my life where I thought, yeah, okay, let's kind of explore this. As you do, got a couple of knockbacks. And then it was so weird. I think it was 3 people put this job in front of me in 24 hours. And I told the story in the TED talk I did over in Shanghai. It was either they wanted rid of me or they thought it was a cool job. Still don't know which one, but 3 different people, unrelated to each other, showed me this job, and it was for the world's first traveling school, Think Global School. So I applied for it, and you never. I don't know. I don't even know what I was thinking at the time. I just applied for it, and ended up going to Germany for an interview, getting the job. And I don't know if you remember, at that point, So I'm going back. I joined when I was 30-ish. So yeah, 16 years ago. So I gave up kind of the full-time contract, the pension, um, the job, the teacher job for life, so to speak. I gave it all up. My parents were annoyed, to say the least. They thought, this sounds like a circus. What are you doing here? This can't be real. And yeah, before I knew it, I was on a plane to Argentina, and it was really stick or twist. This was it. This was either going to work or I was coming back, tail between my legs, looking for my old job back. But anyway, as it goes, landed in Argentina, met a wonderful group of educators who actually the school had just gone through quite a big transformation that year. So I would say about 80% of the staff, 78% were new. So I joined at a nice point in TGS had been in existence, I think, for 2 years at that point. So when I joined, it was about a 70-80% new staff. There was a new head coming in. It was a real redesign of the whole school. So that was good. That was good going into it. I wasn't going into kind of an existing system. I was going in there to kind of build something new. So yeah, that was it. Landed in Buenos Aires, and that was me for the next 12 years.
Right. Okay. So you joined the circus, and what were you, an acrobat? What's going on? Were you being a lady? So you end up in Argentina. Let's carry on that story. So you said TGS. So think global school.
Think global, yeah. Think global school.
Ultimately, is it just based in Argentina? Is it an English school in Argentina? Is it an international school? Is it an American school? Maybe start there, and then because otherwise,
Yeah.
I think the kid did he learn the language pretty quickly? What's going on? Did he learn German, thinking he was going there, and then so just maybe walk through those steps, because it probably seems like a blur and quite accelerated to you. But I'm really interested of so many people who have taken that step. I taught in the UK and only in the UK and doing something different now. Well, that's a big bold move. Tell us about that time in Argentina and
Yeah.
start there. Also TGS, then I guess as a whole in terms of what it looks like and feels like.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got some grounding to what the school was in the kind of interview process, but honestly, I went on to be director of Think Global School. I went through to running it, and I would always say you had to be on the ground for 6 months to even fathom what the school was. So I'd got a bit of an orientation in the interview process, but nothing could prepare me for what happened once on the ground. So yeah, it was the world's first traveling school. Now I'd gone through a few different iterations. So in the early days of TGS, we would go to 2 countries a year. Then about halfway through my time there, we went to 3 countries, and then we completely redesigned it and went to 4 countries. So we would move around the world, same group of kids would pick up and go. So you'd partner with schools, you'd be in WeWork, you'd be in lab spaces. You would be partnering with local NGOs, local businesses, guest speakers, building. And we weren't a project-based school back then. So when I joined, initially 2010, 2011, it was IB school. So we were in IB school for a number of years when I first joined. And I talk I talk a little about this in the book, to say that we had a bit of a crisis after a few years and we changed it, but we were quite a successful IB school in the early days. So yeah, Think Global School, world's first traveling school. It, again, many iterations in terms of country volume. It had fluctuated between 30 kids and 70, I think 70-ish was the highest we ever had at one point. I think that was around 2016-ish. So yeah, and the idea was, you are learning culture, you're learning language, you are immersing these young people into all different types of scenarios, like true real world learning. So not this, this bumper sticker, real world place-based learning, like real world place-based learning. And so that took me to Botswana, Peru, New Zealand, Japan, you name it. Yeah, we went there. So, but yeah, Argentina was the first one. That was kind of the baptism of fire.
Okay, Steve's like, is this genuinely? And some people are going to be listening to this, and I know that when you talk about this, you kind of like talk about it matter of fact, like it's first school, the world's first nomadic school. We did place-based learning. It was immersive language, it's culture. We went to Argentina, Botswana, Peru, Japan, New Zealand, and just. But for most people who sit in this, who are listening here, most people who are been in education, this
They get
is
stressed. They get stressed if they have to move classroom because there's a flood, or the window's
Yeah.
broken and it won't shut.
yeah.
There's a panic if
Get
their car
that.
parking space is taken.
And we're
Yeah.
literally talking about taking 70 kids around the world to multiple different countries, and about how that works. So,
But you lose that quick. Can I just say, you lose that quick. You have to drop that very fast. You don't survive. If you want your own classroom, you want your spot, you want those assurances, you don't last very long. I can tell you that. And not through any sabotage from, the rank and file people there. It's just not the place. There's no real assurances. Do you know what I mean? Like, even the classrooms where you turn up, you hope, we did send people in advance to scout them out, to make sure, safety is paramount, of course. But still, if you're that teacher, that wants the classroom and, everything set for you, not the place.
and so that's happening practically. There's going to be all sorts of challenges. As an educator, you have to be agile in that space. You have to be willing to go, yep, we've got some technology today. We haven't got some technology today. We're in this place. We're not in that place. We've got travel. We've got all sorts of stuff that goes with it. But there must be some incredible lessons that have kind of come out of that as a methodology for schooling and how education could be done differently. Because obviously, what we do as a podcast and what the things that we've had the privilege of speaking to people around the world with is, it is possible to have it done. And then some people are like, yeah, it is possible, but I don't really know it. Yeah, theoretically, but practically, is it possible? And for however many years, you think Global have proven that it's possible. And maybe, like, what came out of that? What did you learn from that? I know you might say, "Blooming heck, we'll be here all night," but what did you learn from that for education?
Yeah, no. I would vary away from education. I would vary away from education either. You learn about yourself. You learn. I mean, I remember sat for 8 weeks in Botswana, most of them days in a tent. Got to go to bed about 6:30 because you're not wandering around outside at that point. And I'm telling you, the quiet. I mean, the animals are there, you hear them, but the actual quiet, the sound. I always remember the sound and the quietness. And I'm telling you, you never sleep like that ever. Yeah, I've never slept like that anywhere in the world. Like, you just, and I think you deal with, you've got to get real comfortable in your own skin, because before you can do anything like, educate, future leaders or any of this stuff, you've got to really figure yourself out. And I remember some real lonely moments. You're away from family, you're away from loved ones, you are not establishing normal ties. For those 12 years, and this is not a violin moment, but you do sacrifice a lot in the name of not just better in education, like I say, not just better in education or trying to create a new model, but trying to figure yourself out. I think that was huge for me. And I think I learned a lot about myself over those years. And how do you handle boredom? How do you handle change of scenery? How do you handle, you get into a new country, where do I do my shopping? Where do I go to the gym? How do I get around this place? There's all that human stuff that we kind of hook onto when we settled in a place that you just don't get there. Now, you try your best to establish them. And I think once you do that and you create that anchor, you can then focus on the education and the learning and all that. But I was very mindful. And then when I took over and was director of the school, I was very mindful that as human beings, before we start being these awesome teachers, we've got to look after the human being first. And that was huge. So looking after the mental health of the staff, the wellness of the kids, and we ran that school through a pandemic as well. So again, terrible business model for a pandemic, by the way.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine it's you can't travel. It's a nomadic school, so like, you get locked somewhere, you get stuck somewhere. What kind of happens into that space? So I love that you've gone into that whole idea that it's not just about education here. Like, as an educator, as a teacher, as somebody who's or even students in that space, leaders, directors in that space, you are having to navigate what it's like as a human, the sleep, the I don't you mentioned boredom there. I was speaking to somebody the other day about this, and how being bored is now not something that we handle. So like, because we have got access to more information ever, and because you're in a space where you've got, I don't know, hours and I was saying to somebody the other day, like, my average screen time being a couple of hours, what was I doing before that screen time was there? Then with them 2 and 3 hours, and we don't sit there waiting bored, do we? We sit there and fill that time, don't we? We don't have any ability to sit with. But in those situations that you're in there, you're saying, I had no choice but to that. There wasn't unlimited internet. There wasn't like access to everything that you would want in some of these places all the time. So you're learning about yourself as much as anything else as a human, and as how you interact with humans. And I think that really comes out in, and I know we'll come to the book in a moment, that really comes out in the book, that we're not just talking about how can I be a better teacher, and how can education be done differently? What can we do to be better humans, and how do we relate to each other? And it's probably relatable now more than ever. How do we thrive? And that's the phrase, one of the phrases in the title of the book, is how do we thrive and how do we do well in life? And that nomadic existence, obviously, like, what's the word, that it's like a catalyst in that space. It's not like it's supercharging that level of that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So like, it was obviously a boarding school. You're obviously with these young people, for big chunks of the day. So there's no hiding place. They get to know you and you get to know them. So if you're too highly strung, or you go in there just, with the mentality, I'm going to teach, bang, 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 then it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You're not going to cut it. So I think ultimately, and a lot of the motivation, I know we'll get to the book later, but a lot of the motivation in the book and the stories I tell were stories that were uniquely human. One I actually didn't talk about in the book much was in Botswana. For the first 2 weeks, we take the tech off the kids when they come in. I say kids, they're 15 to 18, but you take the technology off them. Now, they put up a bit of a fight at first, but what's really fascinating, by the end of now we give them the technology back at the end of the second week, but by the end of the second week, they hardly want it back. They're like, okay, I'll take it. Some actually say, I'll get it at the airport. They actually don't want it back. So it's absolutely fascinating when you actually, and I'm pro technology. I'm not anti-tech. I'm just saying it was very interesting that when we got into Botswana, we went Tech 3 for a few weeks, how certain routines, how the way you exist fundamentally shifts and changes. You start having deeper conversations. You start being in the moment more. We had a saying which was coined by one of our old technology officers, which was Bert, be in real time. And that's really powerful, be in real time, be in the moment, cherish this. You're not going to sit under the stars in Botswana, maybe ever again. So, soak this up. But yeah, so the students, especially in a place like that, India was another one, that you really saw the struggle the students went through. But that was something we never shied away from as an education faculty. We never shied away from that. That was a struggle that was, now a lot of my alumni now work for me. So, so the idea is I've seen those people become brilliant designers, brilliant, members of my team. So I know we didn't do any harm, but also you've got to let that struggle, you've got to let a degree of struggle happen, I think. And we definitely, within reason, there was always, like I said, there's always safety protocols there. But in terms of the design of projects, in terms of getting used to new ways of learning and getting used to no technologies, getting used to not having some of the home comforts that you have, new environments, which is a big thing for a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. Like I say, for us as adults, not a big deal, but for teenagers, all new people around you, you don't know anyone when you first land, so all those teenager things, like, is anyone going to like me? How are my teachers? Where am I? Who's in my dorm with me? That's a big one. Who's in my room? Who's in my advisory? All these things, the people. So we have to navigate that very carefully. And I think we did on the whole. But you're right, Ben. It's very much human. CGS was very much a human first organization. despite us having technology and the travel, it was focused around the human.
This episode of Edufuturist is powered by Integrated Systems Europe, the must-attend event for educators, technologists, and institutional leaders seeking to shape the future of learning.
From the 3rd to the 6th of February 2026, ISE returns to Barcelona, uniting the brightest minds and the boldest ideas in the edtech industry. Join us and push back beyond the possibilities that are transforming the classroom of tomorrow.
Don't just keep up with the industry, get ahead of it. Check out the video that's coming next to find out more and join us for ISE 2026. We'll be there in Barcelona, and use our special code EDUFUTURISTS for free registration at iseeurope.org.
The world of education is changing, and education technology is helping to change it. Different teaching styles, more flexible delivery, and a wider range of resources. All of these mean EdTech is playing a greater role than ever. And that applies to learning taking place in the classroom, the lecture hall, the corporate training center, or delivered online. Integrated Systems Europe is the world-renowned annual tech show for the systems integration and audio-visual industry. At ISE 2026, you will find all the leading EdTech brands in our education technology zone in halls 1 and 2, in our connected classroom showcase, and across the show floor. Solutions on display include wireless presentation systems, interactive displays, short throw projectors, collaboration tables, VR and AR systems, lecture capture, and integrated lecterns. In fact, ISE 2026 has everything you need to create learning experiences that are engaging, involving, and inclusive. See what you can learn. Come to ISE 2026 and explore the future of EdTech.
It's really interesting, and I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but some of those challenges would be pushed to the side, and there'd be too much to ready to jump in either the current society or in the UK specifically, and maybe globally, in a non-nomadic school, because there's a nervousness and a pressure to jump in and help, because we don't think they can solve their own problems. It's like, we shouldn't let them go through challenging times. And we just don't allow them to learn how to fail or any of those things in education. And when they get everything I think we just allow a really safe space without realizing it, because those learners that want to be passive and just sit there, get an attendance mark, and just allowed to just sit there and just be passive. And they coach, because the grey learners that maybe, if they're challenging, let's get rid. If they are positive, they stay in. If they are disengaged but not disrupting, then they sit there, and actually we just allow it to happen. And really, is there enough challenge, I think, and enough stress and enough stress rather than de-stress in education?
No, there's not. There's definitely not. Though we say there is. And I think that's a really dangerous path we're on right now. I know I think I spoke to Ben a bit about this over our correspondence. I think schools are getting very good right now at the marketing, and the idea of, some of the things that you've just mentioned there, Steve, about how much they, embrace challenge and all this. And a lot of it's nonsense. It really is. I'm still shocked when I go into schools at how young people are spoken to. So first thing that jumps out at me, and it's really evident in almost every school I visit, I was there, and I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm not saying everything, but I was director for 7 years in some pretty out there environments. I think I raised my voice twice. I remember once in Japan, and my alumni still laugh at the story because they remember it, because I just never did it. And it still shocks me to this day when I go into schools and just how young people are spoken to. It just blows my mind. And then there's a complaint that these kids are disengaged and they don't cooperate. Well, I wouldn't cooperate if I was spoken to like that. So I think we're getting really good, as I said before, at the bumper sticker. I think we're getting really good at the jargon. And I talk a lot about that in the book, the idea that I go to these schools and we've got the language down a lot of the time. But then you kind of pick the scab and you look behind the curtain and you're like, oh, okay, this doesn't look like what's on the brochure at all. And no one's calling it out. And that really worries me, because I don't know where that leads us to. I don't know where we get, I don't know where this marketing juggernaut with the curriculum not following, I don't know where that takes us. And that,
I think what it does is it numbs. It's almost like it's a numbing cream, which is for we're kind of plastering over cracks, and we're making out that this is all good, and putting a new lick of paint on things, and we're seeing this in schools all around the world. And I know that in some of the contexts that we're talking about, there's they've got these. They might have a fancy swimming pool. They might have a I don't know, a climbing wall. They're all fashionable at the moment, aren't they? But then, and even some of the marketing, like you're saying about project-based learning, discovery, helping young people thrive. They're not. They're just doing the same old repackaged and like you said, marketed. And the challenge that I think that comes to, and what that ends up going into, is that you end at either numb the population and kind of keep pretending, and we maintain a system like we have been doing probably for the last 50 years, if we're honest. Maybe not 150 years, because it worked for a while, but 50 years of just numb. Well, what we needed is, we need to make sure that young people are compliant. We need to make sure that everything runs by bells. We need to make sure that things run in systems. It's a babysitting service for parents. We know that people achieve because they've got an exam grade. We know that a school is successful because they've got a Ofsted outstanding or a HMI good score, whatever else it is. And what actually is happening is it's another generation gone, another generation that's coming out. And the problem we've got, in my mind, and I know that you talk at this as well, the problem we've got is that we haven't got that wasting time, because everything that's once on a day, you could get away with that, but technology is now making it so fast, and I'm hopefully I'm making sense in what I'm saying, is that the job displacement and the fact that young people are going to be in situations where they maybe can coast, and there isn't economically a safety net like we've had before. We get to a point where these performative, beautiful boxed schools are preparing young people for nothing, and then the world is leaving them to go, well, there's a machine that can do that. The conversation I had, the reason why I'm saying this is, and it does make sense. I was speaking to in my head, it makes sense anyway. I was speaking to a group of multi-academy trust leaders, and I was saying to them that once on a day, we knew that technology would automate and replace a small percentage of jobs, and it always has done. There's been certain things that it's automated, and the jobs that were done manually are now done by machines. But what we're seeing with this AI revolution, or what's happening with AI, is that it's taking jobs right at the top end. So high knowledge based, high analytic, top end skills is what we would have sent people to university for, to become lawyers or accountants and this and that, the other. But then those are the like low skill jobs. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I'm talking like our weaker students in schools would have gone and done, which is delivery drivers, which has been factory workers, which has been fast food restaurants. They are also being automated. So it's not like we can just say, well, it's okay, because there's always something that society is going to need. We're always going to need our street sweeping. We're always going to need fast food workers. We're not. So if a system continues in the way that it's doing, that segregates and creates strata of people, the top are going to affect, and those people, the low skill, are also going to be affected, and that's worrying. That worries me. So
I know we've skirted around it a little bit. Ben's mentioned it at least 50 times every time I speak to him. This book thing that's going on. I can see it in the background. Let's step into that a little bit. So, in terms of what are the key messages, and I suppose why the book and why now, I guess, might be a good start, and then what's in it.
I think that's really powerful. I think it's really powerful because the stories in it are great. So if you haven't read it, we will put a link in to get hold of it. I've read it, and I keep coming back to it, and there's little bits I think, that's a cool little thought. Where's he come up with that? In fact, even in a LinkedIn post today, I quoted you. I was like, he used because you used a phrase that I'm going to talk about in a minute. This assessment industrial complex, which I just love it, and I want to unpick it. But the book's called The Firefly Effect. I asked you this question recently, and so I'm going to ask it for listeners. But you wrote this book. It's called The Firefly Effect: How to Learn, Lead, and Thrive in the Age of AI. It's not just about education, which is important, and I can see that that's the thread of it. It is for educators, but it's not just for educators. But tell us why you called it The Firefly Effect, because that is underpinning all of it, I think.
I suppose the why and the detail, and without giving too much away, when you talked about learning, what's different from the other books out there in regards to, I know that it'll have some wonderful stories that we've kind of unpicked in regards to TGS and the nomadic life and everything else, but what underpins it in terms of is it your now thoughts on learning as a whole, or is it a particular focus, or walk us through that bit, I suppose? It's too late to read it, Ben. We're in the middle of a podcast. Don't
No,
start
no.
now. Don't start now,
You,
mate. It's,
you know, I'm like when
Yeah.
I find things, I want to talk about them, and I think the thing that really just as I'm hearing this and I'm looking at it, I'm seeing all these examples of you being in Rome with groups of students, you being in Costa Rica, the things that you learned about in Japan. I think what I'm seeing here is that, and I suppose reason why I resonate with it, even though I finished it yesterday, like it's the reason why I resonate with it is because I've written a book and wanted to do something, try and do something similar, and I think what you've done is achieved what many of us are trying to do, which is say we don't want to be put in a pigeonhole, we don't want to put them in a box. Like you just because somebody is a teacher doesn't mean that that's how they need to be. Just because somebody's interested in sport doesn't mean that they can't also be interested in philosophy. Just because you are good at or bad at one thing doesn't mean you're going to be bad at everything. And I think what I'm picking from it is, and I use Marianne Williamson's poem in my in my book. And one of the greatest films, Coach Carter, obviously talks about this, about our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're powerful beyond measure. And it talks about by letting our own light shine, it unconsciously gives other people the permission to be able to shine their own light. And I think what I'm taking from the book is this ability for the Firefly concept of one starts flashing, and then it means that others start flashing, and then it automatically becomes part of a collage, of a beautiful dance, of of something that's collaborative. That's a message for humanity, which is, if you find out what you're here for, what your light is, and shine that, and help other people shine theirs, and then bring that together and make that a beautiful light display. Like it changes, things change, and that's I don't want that to sound like overly gushy. I think it's important that I think you've nailed that. I think you've done that in a way that means that it can be done in education, it can be done in society, it can be done in families, it can be done. And I think it'd be remiss. The link in the show notes to grab hold of this and to find out what Russ has been doing and to hear more of these stories. But I do want to, before we wrap up, and I'm conscious of everybody's time, I do want to just talk about Hakuba, because I know that actually, where that has developed is almost like in synergy with what's happened and the learning that's happened from that nomadic existence and part of it. So would you just tell those people who don't know about what you've been doing there, what it is, and yeah, just tell us about that. told you he's cool, Steve. I told you he does cool stuff.
I'll just sit here quietly and listen. It's absolutely fine by me. Yeah, I think it's so. Just talking about, it's just 13 and it's 50 and everything else. We've put on an event and it's a massive amount of work, and we do it in a locality of not too far away from where we live. So the ability to put that on, and I suppose you say there's no intent and you pull everything together, but what is the goal potentially? Is it, you say we hope that things that happen, we create space. Is it just the ability to create space and then communities to connect, collaborate, and connect, collaborate, and communicate, and hopefully something drives in terms of partnership just organically? Is that what it was set up, or what is the goal of the organisation and beyond, or is it just a? Because if it's just a holiday, I'm more than happy. As long as I don't have to have an outcome, or like Ben does, I'll just sit there silently and listen. But the driving force behind it, and the objective of where you want to get to then as a collective, I guess.
Sounds fascinating, and I've been following what you've been doing there and thinking this is cool. This is really cool. Now it feels a little bit like trite to do this, but it's an important thing of what we do. So as part of our Edufuturist podcast, we always finish with 3 quick fire questions, and I know these are going to be deep and profound, but we'll go with them. I'll do the first one, Steve will do the second, and then there's a third one. And then you can leave us with what can people do to take this message and move on with it. So the first question is, if schools were judged like restaurants by how much customers actually enjoyed the experience, what would change overnight?
What is the most dangerous myth that educators tell themselves to avoid real change?
And if a 10-year-old asked you why they have to go to school, what would you say to them? Cool. I hear that. I hear that. Russ, if you were to give us a parting thought for the people that are listening to this and watching this, what kind of message do you want to put out into the world? And I know that it's the book, by the book, that's the message we're going to say. So you don't need to say it and feel weird that you're doing salesy stuff. But like, what do you think is important for not just the future of learning, but futurism? Full stop. Love it. It's a good one, Steve. Look, Steve, you know that it's been a good one when Steve's like smirking like this. He's just like, this is deep. This is good. It's good. It's made us think. It's made us think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been intriguing, been thought provoking, and provocative in a positive light. Been some wonderful stories told along the way. So it's always a pleasure when we get somebody on like this. Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, Russ, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Edufuturists podcast, everybody. The link to get hold of Russ's book and to connect with him on the socials as well will be in the show notes. And we'll see you very, very soon and another episode and see where we get to. It's going to be Christmas soon enough. Ho, ho, ho. It'll be snowing here. It won't be snowing in Dubai, though. So take care, everybody. Thank you.